Before we get into today's episode, I want to share something that's helped transform my daily routine. I've started using Bob, the refillable bottle-free body wash designed specifically for men. If you're still using bottled shower gel, you're literally washing money down the drain. Let's face it, you always use more than you need, and half of it just slips through your hands before it touches your skin. Bob combines a reusable applicator with exfoliating bristles and the world's first refillable body wash bars, formulated to match a man's skin pH of 5.5. It's better for your skin, better for your wallet, and better for the planet. For an exclusive 15% offer on your first order, head over to welcometobob.com and use the code meaningofmen15 at checkout. Welcome back to The Meaning of Men. I'm your host, Simeon Atkins, and today we're tackling a topic that sits at the heart of so many relationships: gender equality. As men, we're often raised with the expectation that we must be the providers, protectors, and problem solvers. But what happens when those traditional roles create imbalance, stress, or even resentment in a partnership? Today, I'm joined by Kate Mangino, author of Equal Partners, to explore how gender equality in relationships goes beyond simply dividing tasks or responsibilities at home. We discuss the mental and emotional labour that often goes unnoticed, the ingrained expectations that shape our roles, and how couples can navigate these dynamics to create a true sense of partnership. Let's get into it. Kate, what is the mission in the work that you're doing? And I guess as an extension to that question, what do you want people to take away from our conversation today?
That's a great question. I think what my mission is to have people think more intentionally about gender, to notice the gender norms that are at play around us, to realize how much we do sort of on autopilot because we're just doing what our parents do or what our neighbors do or what our older siblings are doing. But when you stop and think about it, and you think about the norms that are impacting our life, you can really then make some more intentional, direct decisions that are best for each one of us independently. So I think that's my mission, is just to help people see the gender norms at work and to make the best decisions for themselves.
Give me a sense of who you are and what journey you've been on that's led you on the path to doing what you're doing today.
I've had a rather twisty, turny journey, as a lot of people have. I come from the field of international development. That's what I got my degrees in. And I've been working in that field for almost 25 years, which means that I work overseas to make sure that projects, whether they're healthcare or voting systems or education systems, are constructed in a way that are equitable for girls, boys, men, women, and diverse people of diverse genders or non-conforming genders. And then I guess, about 8 or 10 years ago, I'd been doing that work exclusively overseas. And then I started to notice a real disconnect in my life. I was seen as this expert when I was in my work mode, and I would fly into these spaces and I would have rooms full of nurses in Zambia or HIV advocates in Nigeria or dads groups in Indonesia. And because I was the expert, people would show up and they would listen to me and they would have these really interesting conversations about gender with me. And then I would go home, and I had 2 little kids at home, and I was having very antiquated conversations about gender with my own family, my neighbors, my friends, my colleagues. And I wanted to bridge that. I wanted to be able to have gender conversations with my own community, and I didn't really know how. So that's sort of when I started to balance my work 50-50. Still have a foot in the international space and also do a lot of work at home as well.
If I put myself in the shoes of someone that's listening to this today, I think there's 2 things that I will be fascinated to take away. I think the first thing is, we're going to be focusing on Equal Partners, your book, and looking at gender equality, particularly in the household. Mm-hmm. I believe, and I could be proven wrong by the end of this episode, that I'm in quite a progressive relationship with my wife. I feel like we share quite a lot of the roles and responsibilities and have quite a diverse set of things that we're looking after in the house. But I've never really stopped properly to think about it. So I'll be really interested to dive into that with you in more detail and have a talk about what good looks like, I guess. And then the other side of it is I'd certainly never thought about gender equality when it comes to mental health, and particularly men's mental health. And I think what's going to be fascinating is diving into how that can have an impact on men's mental health, and some of the steps that, if you're looking at gender equality in your life, actually how that can also help your mental health as well. I'm going to start with the very, very basic question, because I think it's important that from the start, everyone's on the same page, I guess, and has the same understanding. How would you define gender equality at a very simple level, and why it's so important to understand and recognize?
So I would say gender equality in the household is that no matter what the gender identity or the sexual orientation of the two people in that partnership, and I think a lot of people are surprised that my book is very inclusive of gay and queer couples, that these norms and these imbalances fall onto lots of different kinds of couples. It's not just heteronormative couples, and it's not always the woman that does more work. Also, it can be a mix. But gender equality is that when you've got this relationship of two people, and no matter what their gender identity is, they kind of share 50-50 in physical tasks and 50-50 in cognitive labor, so that both people in their weeks and months together, years, have equitable time for work, for time off, and for caregiving.
Is a 50-50 split, is that the ideal? Are there certain scenarios where actually having a 60-40 split or a 70-30, however you want to look at it, might be beneficial for that couple? When would a 50-50 split be optimal, do you think?
Well, first of all, I do not recommend a spreadsheet and following each other around with a pen and a pencil and an Excel sheet. I mean, I can't think of anything less romantic as that.
Thank goodness for that.
And at the end of the day, you are supposedly in love with each other, and that's why you choose to be together. I think 50-50 can work for a lot of couples, but I certainly don't prescribe it. I think that it really comes down to who you are. Now, if you are both working jobs that are about this, you're both, say, working in the United States, full-time is 40 hours a week. So if you're both holding down a job around 40 hours a week, and neither one of you has, you have very kind of similar work expectations, then 50-50 might make sense. If one of you has, what some people call a greedy job, which is, maybe you're a physician, or maybe you're a partner at a law firm, or maybe you're a politician and your job requires many more hours, then maybe what's more equitable is a percentage of home time, right? You both spend 30% of your time at home doing caregiving or cleaning or whatever it is. I think what makes sense is that when you step back and you look at your relationship from, say, 10,000 feet over time, neither one of you feels bitter. Neither one of you feels resentful. You both feel like you're doing your fair share. I think it's a hard thing to define, but I think everyone knows it in their own relationship if one of you is bitter, or if one of you feels like, nope, my partner's pulling their weight.
I guess the key to this is communication and talking through that. And It seems to me like it would be, in an ideal scenario, a conversation that you'd have maybe relatively early on in the relationship. But I guess it's never too late. If you've been with someone for a while, it's never too late to start that conversation and set those expectations.
For sure. I completely agree with you. I think ideally you start these conversations when you're dating, right? To set expectations and norms and have really clear conversations. Tell me about what your upbringing was like. Tell me about your parents. Do you want to replicate that? Or are you okay with, doing something different? And then continuing the conversation. This isn't a conversation you can have once. Like, you know what it's like when you first meet someone and you're dating and they're fantastic and it's all about sex and being together. You have one conversation, you're like, ooh, we're on the same page. Great. No, you have to talk about it like hundreds of more times. So as early as possible, and it needs to be continuous. And just as you said, it's never too late. If you've been together for 20, 25, 30 years, but one of you feels resentful, one of you really feels like my partner isn't pulling the weight and I am starting to fall out of love, or starting to think about ending the relationship, or starting to fill in the blank, you can always talk about it.
Your book, Equal Partners, give me a bit of a sense of what the book's about and what inspired you to write it in the first place.
Do you mind if I tell you a quick story? Because there was one night that crystallized why I wanted to write this book. Let me get the year right. It was 2016. I was finishing up my dissertation and I was teaching 3 classes, undergrad classes. And I was the alpha parent. Like, my husband had the office job. I was the one that did drop off and pick up and always came if the kid was sick. And my kids were 2 and 5. So they were little, like I was in it. And I was working at absolute maximum capacity. And my dissertation advisor, I don't know what possessed her to do this, but she called me in her office and she said, I know your dissertation is due in 2 months, but I'm getting super busy and I need you to have it done in 1 month. So not only was I at maximum capacity, but now I just lost a month of like when to write my life's paper. And I went home that night and I had an absolute total mental breakdown. Just lost it. I met with her in the evening, so by the time I got home, my kids were in bed. The house was quiet. Evan was cleaning up. That's my partner. He was in the kitchen cleaning up dishes. And I just sat on the floor and absolutely sobbed. And Evan's a really good person. I like him a lot. He sat down next to me and he's like, what can I do? Like, what can I do to help? And then this like fury of anger came out of me. And I was like, I don't want to tell you what to do. I want you to just be there. I want you to be my partner. I don't want to manage the household and give you tasks. I want you to know what to do. And we ended up having this very long conversation. And I forgot the caveat here is that I was finishing a dissertation on the intersection of women's empowerment and masculinities. So I was like perfectly poised to have this conversation, but I was so mad at myself that even though I was having this academic experience, my own family was falling into these gender patterns. And so I explained to Evan that night that I said, I'm already pulling away from work. I'm just finishing my academic career and I'm already not applying to write a paper or not applying to go to a conference or not putting my hat in the ring for a new research because I have so many duties at home. I'm already pulling away from work because of our kids. And you're already pulling away from the kids because of work. I'm watching you coming home a little bit later every night. I'm watching you take opportunities and travel opportunities to work your way up the ladder. And I'm seeing you pull away from the kids. And I said, this is hurting me, but I'll recover. This is hurting you more. You only get this once. Your kids are only little once. And you're going to regret the time that you're losing with them. And this is the connection you mentioned to mental health earlier. I said, I feel bad for both of us right now, but I feel worse for you. And I want to make a change now. And we started to work it out and we started this conversation. And that's where Equal Partners came from, was giving everyone this information that I had in my head that I had researched. And instead of focusing on what was a problem, because we have infinite information out there about what men do wrong, I wanted to have a book about what men do right. I wanted to talk to men who were living as equal partners, who got it, who were making the sacrifices, who were already doing it, and learn lessons from them so that we didn't just have lectures about what's wrong, but we had examples of what men could work towards. And those interviews helped my own marriage, it helped my own parenting, and I think, it brought the book to life.
I guess that comes down to how to approach these kind of conversations as well. So I don't mind admitting, like, my ego gets in the way sometimes when I'm trying to have constructive conversations. If I feel like I'm being put down in some way, then I'll just shut off. And even if what the other person is saying is correct,
sure,
I just won't want to hear it. I'll deny it. I know I'm guilty of this.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's positioned, as you were saying there and talking about the things that you're doing right and doing well, and just saying, can we do more of that, or can we expand it into doing this?
Yeah.
Like, there's a good example actually from me recently. My wife asked me to clean the bathroom. She was out and it was just one of the jobs that she wanted some help with, and I did it. And she made a comment of saying, you did such a good job with that bathroom. Like, it looks great. Like, and it really helped me. And that then immediately encouraged me then the next week to just do it without even her actually asking. Because she'd said it in a way that was encouraging to me and telling me what I was doing right and emphasizing the fact that it was helping her, I was then more inclined to want to do it again because I knew I was helping and actually I was doing a good job. So I think that framing, as you saying there, is when you're approaching these kind of conversations is so important.
Yeah, I think that's a good story. And I think that goes for all of us. I would much rather respond to people giving me praise or thanks than tearing me down. I think that that's natural. I don't think that's one way. I think that it works both ways for all couples.
What are some of the common misconceptions that you hear a lot around gender equality in domestic settings?
I think it's probably the number one thing is that it's biological, right? That women are just biologically better at caregiving and nurturing. Women are better at multitasking. I hear that a lot too. That there's something in our DNA or our hormones that makes us good at cleaning bathrooms or kitchens or cooking or rocking kids to sleep, and that men are missing it. I think that's what I hear a lot. And obviously, we know that's not true. It's the way that we're socialized. At the end of the day, all of these skills, including caregiving, they're learned. I mean, if there was something biologically better about women, then how do you explain adoptive parents, which is ludicrous, right? Anyone can get better at household skills. It just takes practice and intention.
I guess one of the challenges around that is, like, particularly in the UK, I'm not sure if it's the same in the US, but you could go through until like secondary school, so when kids are sort of like 12, 13, and not have a male teacher in that time. So nursery and primary school, those caregiving roles are female. And so it sort of, for me anyway, it's made me think as a father to a boy and a girl, I've got this almost this responsibility, but I embrace it in a way, or I'd say maybe more of an opportunity than a responsibility to
Yeah.
actually
Hmm.
show that nurturing and show that caregiving coming from a male role model, and
Hmm.
not just having them think, well, that should only be coming from women, essentially.
And I 100% agree with you that it is exceedingly important that children see caregiving role modeled from all different kinds of people and not just women. My son, who's 10, has a male teacher this year, and Mr. I is, if not his favorite, then definitely in his top 3 teachers he's ever had. He's just incredibly kind, calming, loving part of my son's life right now, and we're grateful for him. So I wish there were more male teachers for those primary and nursery years.
Hi everyone, I want to take a moment to shout out Apex Everest, an incredible organisation and partner of the show who are pushing the limits of human resilience. Imagine this, climbing the equivalent of Mount Everest, but right here in the UK, by summiting the Helvellyn mountain 9 times in just 48 hours. But Apex isn't just about the challenge, it's the chance to be part of a year-round, vibrant community dedicated to unlocking your true potential. Whether you're looking to push your own limits or you're part of a team wanting to build an unshakable bond, this experience will stick with you for life. So if you're ready to conquer your Everest and be part of something special, check out apexeverest.com to find out more. Looking at mental health specifically, what are some of the impacts of an unequal partnership in the home around men's mental health? What kind of impact can that have on them?
Good question. We talk so much about the negative impacts for women. We don't talk enough about negative impacts for men. If a man is trying to perform that traditional role in the household, the breadwinner, the leader, the head of the household, the decision maker, the strong one, the one that doesn't get rattled, the one that can take care of everyone all the time, the one that makes sure that it's okay if she works, but I'm the one that's really responsible for the key finances. How many times have you heard a man's salary as being like the core salary, and then the woman's salary is like the extra, right? So you bear that burden of responsibility and you carry that weight. And And because you're trying to perform for your family in a way, you're trying to always be strong, always be in charge, always know what's going on. I'm never worried. I'm never scared. I've got you. That's unrealistic. We are all scared in some point in our life. We are all uncertain. Not one parent on this planet can tell me that they had utmost confidence when they carried their infant home for the first time. I think all of us are like, wait, you're trusting me to take this human home and take care of it and keep it alive? We all have moments of internal freak out where we're trying to make the best decisions we can for our family, whether they're financial or they're caregiving, or it's where we're going to live or what kind of house we're going to have, or are we going to live close to the family or far? Are we going to... And to take that on is to be the person that has to care, not care in a caregiving way, but to manage that and manage everyone's emotion and make sure that everyone is okay all the time is an incredible burden for men. And men are not socialized to share their problems. Men are not encouraged to cry. Men are not encouraged to talk to a therapist or talk to friends about what's going wrong in their life. And so men tend to hold all of that inside. You push it down, you just suck it up and move on, you man up, right? All of the phrases that we've heard, our whole lives. And all of that pushing stress down over time builds up. And what it's resulted to is we have much higher suicide rates in men than we have in women. We have men on average dying 5 years before women globally. We have heart disease, much more common in men than in women, heart attack. We have substance abuse is higher in men than women. And I think that all of that stress, all of that pushing it down, all of that not dealing with it, all of that performative masculinity, trying to be the strong one in the house for so long, absolutely takes their toll. And when you can be an equal partner and you can take on some of the domestic work and take on that caregiving work, the beautiful flip side of that is you also just get to be yourself. You get to be scared. You get to be uncertain. You get to be frustrated. You get to be genuine. And you get to be loved for whoever you are. And the men that I interviewed for my book said that far and away, that was their number one motivation. They said, I don't live as an equal partner because it's better for someone else. I live this way because it's better for me.
Interesting. And what were some of the things that they were saying that made them feel better? You were saying that they were able to kind of be themselves. What else were they sort of saying in terms of the benefits they felt with that?
One man I interviewed was in his third partnership. He had been married and divorced twice before, and he said that both of his first two marriages didn't work because he was trying to pretend to be someone he was not. The first one, he was married quite young, and he was trying to be this tough man sort of. Actually, I think there was gang affiliation actually with his background. And so he was trying to be this security force, this tough guy. And he said, I couldn't sustain that. I was acting. It wasn't who I was at all. I was acting in my house with my partner. I was acting out at work. I was acting with my friends, and I couldn't sustain that. And then the second time he got married, it was a different situation, again, where he wasn't being genuine and true to himself. And it's this third relationship that I interviewed him in now, and he said, I'm honest about who I am with my partner. I don't pretend anymore to be something that I'm not. And there's an incredible relief in that she likes me for who I am. He said, my first two marriages, my ex-wives were in love with someone that I wasn't. And so I felt like a phony. And that caused stress and sadness. And to be loved for who I am makes me feel so much better about myself. He also learned, because he was able to be genuine with his partner, he also learned to be genuine with his kids. He could open up with his kids. He could be vulnerable with his kids. And then he saw that when he was vulnerable with his children, they in turn were vulnerable with him. And then they had a real relationship. He said, I'm not the kind of dad that just does an hour of catch on Saturdays. I'm the kind of dad that my kids come to when they have a problem, when they need to talk through something, when they're having a difficulty in school, or when they, have a problem with a friend. And he felt the word he used was competent. I feel incredibly competent that I am a really good father and a good partner.
It's interesting how it can then have an extension into your identity. I hadn't really thought about that. It's not just about doing tasks, it's actually more than that. It's also, as you were saying there, building your identity or showing your true identity, I guess. It's really interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way before. And then, as you were sort of alluding to there, that can have really positive knock-on effects of how you show up in other areas of your life, like work and how you are with your friends and everything like that. So we were kind of talking earlier about men getting told that they're doing the wrong thing a lot of the time. One of the things that I've sort of observed in my own life, I guess, and conversations I've had with other guests as well, is that I think sometimes men and fathers can feel like second class citizens in that
Yes.
respect. So women have gone through this miracle process of giving birth, which is,
Right.
something that men will never be able to get their heads around. But then they almost feel like because of that, and maybe because of historically all the emphasis being on the mothers, they can almost feel like someone described it to me as being in the cheap seats, which I kind of
That's a good
was
one. Yeah.
just I thought was quite an interesting way to put it. And I think where that becomes one of the ways that then becomes an issue is that when you're, I think, as a father, if you're feeling stressed about something, or if you feel like something's kind of weighing you down, you would, I think, then be less likely to talk about it, because you'd feel like, well, what right have I got to be saying that I've got issues and I've got troubles, with everything that the mother's doing and everything they've been through and everything like that. Why should I then talk up and sort of vocalize that I might be having stresses and worries? And this comes back to a discussion I was having with someone around postnatal depression in men, and the fact that I think a lot of men in those early months are suffering with it, but actually don't feel like they can verbalize it because, as I said, what right do you have to kind of talk about that? Is that something that was maybe coming up in some of the interviews that you were having as well?
Absolutely. Oh, I have so much to say. And I love the concept of cheap seats. I'm going to use that in the future. I think that, first of all, yes, I think that men often have, for example, men shared stories around infertility with me, or having, going through miscarriage, or the death of an infant, and how traumatizing that was. But they felt like they couldn't go to their partner because their partner had gone through so much more, and there were really no other networks. I think in those situations, it probably isn't your partner's responsibility to also be there to support you. This is why we need more networks of men. We need more friend groups, and we need more, I'm on an infinite number of moms groups and women's groups and chats, and most men are not on groups where they can say, like, hey guys, I'm really, this has been really hard. Is anyone up to talk, right? That's just not how men have been raised and been socialized. So I do think that we need more of that for sure. The other thing that I'll mention is gatekeeping, which is the academic term for sort of keeping men out of the caregiving space, which happens, sometimes it happens intentionally, and more often than not, I think it happens subconsciously. But it's the way that we sort of keep men away. Let me give you an example instead of trying to describe what it is. It's a Saturday morning, and mom's doing whatever, and the dad says, "I'll get the kids ready." So he goes and dresses the kids and does their hair and ready to go. And the mom says, "Oh my gosh, their outfits don't match at all. They look ridiculous. And why you didn't braid her hair right? Oh, I'll do it over." And takes the kids back and fixes their outfit and redoes their hair. Okay. There's nothing wrong. The kids were ready for the weather. There's nothing, so what if their clothes didn't match? But it makes him feel inadequate. It's kind of like, what if you clean that bathroom and then your wife, instead of saying, "Thank you, that was really lovely," said, "You didn't do it right. You didn't get the corners. And where did you learn how to clean the bathroom? And I'm going to have to redo it." Well, are you going to like be real excited to clean that bathroom in the future? Are you going to be real excited to take care of your kids? No, you hear that once or twice and you can let it go. But if you hear that repeatedly, it really takes a toll on the relationship. And that parent who's hearing it, and it's not always the woman who's dishing it out. So let me just, if there's one parent who's gatekeeping the other, regardless of gender identity, eventually that other parent's going to stop trying. Why should I try? You're never going to be happy anyway. I'll just let you do it. And I think that happens so frequently with men. There's this perception that men aren't good with infants, or that men don't know how to, parent. And so they're sort of put in the cheap seats at a very early age. And once you're kind of up in those cheap seats and people aren't used to having you around, then it's just kind of easy to stay there. Right. And I think that that is something that we need to be really conscious of. And again, that's communication. If you feel like your partner is doing some gatekeeping, hard thing to bring up, totally get that. But, find a gentle way to say, okay, the outfit might be goofy and it might not be what you picked out, but I did it and the kids are ready to go. Let's just go and have a really good time. Right.
I was smiling there because my sense of coordination and dress sense, I think for myself is okay, but when it comes to particularly dressing my daughter is questionable at best sometimes. And there's definitely been some times where I've brought my daughter down, but my wife has maybe raised an eyebrow, but never really made an issue of it.
Good for
But
her.
you are right. I think the more that the more that you're hearing that kind of thing, I think, again, going back to like the ego sense as well, like I don't know whether this is true for like men in general, but I can only talk about like myself. Like I said before, my ego definitely gets in the way a lot of the time. And so if I'm hearing this stuff, then I'm just not going to want to try, and I'm going to want to pull away. So that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. And I will say, we also have to remember that socially, women are judged for these things. Like if your kids go out in public and they're dressed goofy, does anyone look at the father and think, oh, he didn't do a good job? No, they look at the mom and say, what are you thinking? Right. So we know, women know, moms know that they're being judged. And so oftentimes we feel like we do the extra work to prevent that judgment from happening. So I do think, being empathetic to that, that's again, getting at the norm. There's a social norm that women are responsible for maintaining a clean and tidy domestic space. And that goes to the kids and the cooking and the house cleaning and all of it. And when anything's out of, anything's dirty, or you bring a store-bought good to the school bake sale instead of baking something your own, the dad doesn't get the hairy eyeball, right? It's the mom who's being judged. And so I think we also have to remember that too.
I'd love to get your take on what role as a father I can play in shaping both my son and my daughter's understanding of gender equality in the household, and having this like emotional openness and awareness of what's happening.
From the research that I've done, I have learned that it is important to both role model and to have direct conversations. So you want to role model it in the household as much as possible. Make sure that you're not just doing tasks that are coded for dads, like, mowing the lawn or changing light bulbs or doing something with the car. That you're also doing tasks that are often coded for women, which is cooking and cleaning and dishes and washing hair and bath time and that sort of thing, right? And helping your partner to also break out of the norm a little bit as well, so that you're sharing tasks and you're role modeling what equality looks like. And I also learned that that's not enough, that, your kids are still super young. You can start with little messages now, like daddies make great caregivers, or, oh, you skinned your knee, come over here, I can take care of it too. It starts little when they're small. And then as they grow up, you can have more direct conversations to say, social norms dictate that a lot of us fall into these patterns. And, your mom and I tried really hard to counter those patterns. And so this is what I did differently than what my dad did. What kind of parent do you think you might want to be, right? But to talk about it out loud so that your kids know that it was intentional and it wasn't an accident. The older your kids get, the less influence you have on them. So right now they're little, they're home all the time. It's all you and your partner. And that's amazing. And I miss that. But then they grow up and they spend a lot of time in school and they spend time at their friends' houses, and they're going to receive those traditional gender messages everywhere: movies, television, friends, teachers. And it's going to take extra work for you to counter those messages. So I think that's why those direct conversations are really important.
It was really interesting when you started to talk about those I suppose, quote unquote, traditional tasks that men might do, for example. So I
Hmm.
ran a couple of polls a while ago now on our Instagram page,
Okay.
and I was deliberately trying to be a little bit provocative with this. But I asked the question around taking out the bins was one. So should men always be the ones to be expected to take out the bins? And the other one was, should men always be expected to do the DIY in the house?
Right.
And in both of those polls, it still swayed. I think the DIY was slightly closer, but the bins was definitely heavily in. Yes, the man should still do that. So there's
Interesting.
definitely this view of, like, I guess these set roles. Like,
These
do you think?
smelly, dirty tasks.
Yeah, I know. Do you think that that is? And again, I was asking these to be slightly provocative and maybe get a bit of a response. But do you think that there is a an issue around that, in terms of, if these sort of tasks, it's only men that are doing them, and as you were saying, their children kind of see that, is that something that we should maybe be slightly aware of as a couple, and say, yes, there's some certain things that I'm happy to do and you're happy to do, but maybe let's consciously try and make some of these tasks that would be traditionally what the husband would do or the wife would do actually kind of like switch it up a little bit?
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I know I'm stubborn. I fully admit that, but I take out the trash probably more than my husband just because I'm trying to prove a point to, I don't know, myself, our neighbors. I'm not sure who, but he'll see me like struggling around the back, like with these giant things. And he's like, will you please just let me do it? No, I've got this. I do think that we have to be conscious of what we're doing. And I think that here's the other thing. It's okay if you have some traditional gender roles in your relationship. That's fine. I love laundry. I find it incredibly calming, and I'm kind of controlling over the laundry. I want to do it my way and I want to fold it my way, and I like to listen to an audiobook when I fold laundry. It's kind of a zen experience for me. I also love wrapping presents. Like I have an array of bows and ribbons and wrapping paper. So there are female coded tasks that I genuinely enjoy doing, and I'm going to keep doing those things in my home. And I'm also going to say out loud to my kids, I like doing these things and they're female coded, but that doesn't mean they're only for women. So I'm going to teach my son how to wrap a beautiful package just as much as I'm going to teach my daughter the same thing. And I'm going to say to them over and over as they grow up, this isn't attached to a gender. This is just my own thing, so that they know when they grow up, they have choices. I think that's important. I don't think we have to change who we are. Like if you don't mind doing the trash and your partner hates it, then there's no reason for her to do it just to prove a point. But I just think being cognizant of it and making intentional decisions and then being honest about that with your kids is really important.
Yeah, I think, like you were saying, it's not about doing it for the sake of doing it, but at least having a bit of an awareness of it and not taking it for granted, and
Good.
having a conversation about it. And if you end up in the same place, that's fine, but actually you might end up in some place different that sort of benefits both of you. This has honestly been such a fascinating conversation. I've got a couple more questions
Go
to
for it.
ask you just to finish up.
Sure.
Um, from everything that we discussed and the research that you've done, what gives you hope that promoting gender equality at home can lead to I guess, a broader cultural shift that can benefit men and their mental health? Kind of, I guess, sort of like building on what we were talking about around identity, how that can then flow into wider society and have longer lasting benefits for men in particular, and men's mental health.
I'm a researcher at heart, so I'm always going to go back to the data. And I will say there's a lot of quantitative data that is collected by the UN and the State of the World's Fathers. So that's a great report if anyone wants to sort of look at their country and how they stack up in terms of men's participation and men's equality, gender equality, and the linkage to mental health. I do qualitative data, which means that I interview individual people and talk to them. And I guess what gives me hope is that I've talked to, gosh, at this point, well over 100 men from diverse backgrounds, economic backgrounds, men who have, a high school diploma, men who have PhDs, stay-at-home dads, career dads from different geographical locations. But they all have said to me, it doesn't matter where you come from. We all have autonomy over ourselves at the end of the day, and we all have the power to live the life that we want to live. You know, when I started my research, I was expecting to find some kind of commonality. You know, I could say men with sisters are better partners, or I don't know, men with baby brothers, or you know, some kind of a clickbait title that would look great on an article. And although I did find some trends, there was nothing that was conclusive. And that kind of bummed me out for a while until I finally realized that if I flipped it upside down, it wasn't so much that there was a commonality between all of the men who lived as equal partners, but that there was such a such diverse backgrounds where they all came from. And what brings me hope is that they all got there. They all got there on their own. It didn't matter where they came from. They all had help. They didn't do this on their own. They all had some kind of help along the way. But they all got there in the end. And they felt healthier. They felt happier. They felt that they had really strong partnerships with their spouses. And I don't want to gloss over that, because marriage is hard, right? I joke that staying married is easy, but staying happily married is really difficult. I'm coming up on my 19th anniversary, and I understand the work that goes into a partnership. And to stay in love with your partner takes a lot of work. And the men that I interviewed were still in love with their partners, and got a lot of happiness and satisfaction from being married, from being dads, from perhaps caring for elderly parents, for being part of their communities, for being good friends. Yeah, I've seen the evidence, I've heard the stories, and I think that's probably, I think that's what we need to talk about the most, right? That men don't have to focus on gender equality because it's better for someone else. You can be selfish, right? And you can figure out that gender equality is good for you. And that's a good enough reason.
What's one important thing relating to gender equality in the home that we haven't spoken about today and we really should have done?
I would like to actually reference the interview that you did with Dr. Judy Chu a few episodes ago, and to say that talking about healthy boyhood links 100% to what we're talking about today. So it's not two separate things. It's a continuum of the lifespan of a boy and a man. And I also talk to unhappy couples in my job, and what I often hear from women is when they're unhappy with their partnership is, my husband isn't able to articulate feelings. My husband is unable to empathize with me. My husband is not a good listener. My husband can't tell me how he's feeling, and so he can't, you know, he doesn't understand how I'm feeling, that we have this disconnect. You know, all of these things are exactly what you were talking about with the boyhood conversation, that if we raise our young men, our boys, to show emotion, to name their emotions, to feel all of the things, to be who they are, to be their own genuine self, they will grow up to be more confident partners. And so I just want to make sure that we have that sort of full cycle connection in this conversation.
Okay, thank you so much for your time today. I've really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think from a personal perspective, thinking about my own relationship, I think it's been really good to be able to reflect on some of the stuff that we do at the moment, but also some of the things that we possibly haven't spoken about and maybe taken for granted. And actually thinking about it in a way that is beneficial for your partner, the relationship, but also for you. I think what you said around actually just being a bit selfish and actually thinking that
Yeah.
thinking about gender equality from a selfish perspective and what that can do for you is absolutely fine. There are a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
And I think the conversation around mental health and gender equality is a lot clearer to me now, in terms of if you're starting to think about it and starting to act on it, it can really help with your sense of identity, your sense of purpose. And then that can have really nice knock-on effects of not just what's going on in your relationship, which can be healthier and happier as a result, but actually what's happening at work and with your friends and everything like that. So I think there's a lot to think about, and there's probably a lot that we haven't spoken about on this topic today, but it feels like it's a good starting point for people that haven't thought about gender equality, and certainly gender equality around men's mental health and the benefits of it. So I've personally taken a lot away from it, and I'm sure people listening have as well. So thank you so much for your time today.
Of course. I think it was well put, what you just said. And I think for too long, people have done work around men and masculinities and healthy boyhood because it's a pass through to something else. Like, we're working with boys and men because we want gender equality or because we want something for women and girls. I think it's enough to say, I'm doing work with men and boys because I love men and boys. And that's enough, right? Like, it's enough to be selfish. It's enough to do something for yourself. It's not always for someone else. And I think that we should be bold enough and confident enough to say that out loud.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.